when things were different. You can bring a kid into a bar. I remember sitting in bars and eating peanuts, and while my mom was drinking a pitcher of beer or two pitchers of beer. And it's crazy because you can watch videos of people on drugs and them ODing or dying or whatever the case may be. And if you want to get high, you're going to get high. If you want to drink, you're going to drink, period. I'm a firm believer of that as well. But let me tell you this, for anybody that I can reach, it is the most horrifying possible way to die.
Welcome to the Sober and Free podcast. I'm Susanna. And this is for anyone who's done with drinking, not into meetings, and ready to reclaim their life. Sobriety is just the beginning. And sobriety isn't punishment, it's power. Power to choose, to feel, and to finally live on your own terms. Let's get into it. Today I'm joined by Mark Starcevic, a full-time businessman, father, soon-to-be husband, and part-time podcaster and sober coach. He's an all-round powerhouse who's helping others find freedom in sobriety by working through their core issues live on air. When he's not working, Mark spends time listening to others and speaking about his own recovery. But what really brings us together today is his personal relationship with alcohol and drugs. This led to a life-changing moment of clarity. Mark has started a podcast and a community called Beyond the Struggle. You can find it on YouTube. In this conversation, we'll dive into his powerful story, the highs and lows of sobriety, the painful death of his mom, and the mindset that finally made it stick. This is a real, honest conversation about living sober without shame. Hello, I have with me today Mark. And Mark Starcevic and I have had a few conversations. It's been lovely getting to know him. And now I'm very honored that he, founder of Beyond the Struggle podcast, has come on my little show, Sober and Free, and is willing to share his story with us. Hi, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Susanna?
I'm doing really good today. Really good. As on this beautiful Mother's Day morning.
Yes. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers.
Yes, I'm having my eggs Benedict in a little bit.
Oh yeah, I'm having church in a little bit.
Well, after church. So Mark, let's talk about the end. You're doing how things are right now. You're doing this Beyond the Struggle podcast. So you talk with mostly becoming free alcoholics and addicts, and maybe somewhat still struggling, and just sort of everything in between, don't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I try to take everybody's testimony, whether it be 1 month or one day, it doesn't matter to me. And try to figure out where people have a stand in life, and try to kind of dissect it a little bit, and trying to give them the knowledge to make it another day or another week or something like that, at the same time of listening, because that's a huge part of recovery, is listening to people. So
Yeah, they say
that's what
that they say addiction is the disease of isolation. And
it is.
that experiment that they did with the rats, I don't know if you've heard of it, but they put rats in a cage and they gave them Coke water, so cocaine. So they drank the cocaine water, they became addicted, and they very soon died because they overdosed. Then it was an empty cage. Then they put rats in a cage with, the Ferris wheel, things to do, games to play, other rats, and they still
Right.
put the Coke water, but they put Coke water and plain water. And they put the plain water in with that empty cage that I talked about. But this time, when they had engagement and they were not isolated, they chose the plain water over the cocaine water. So it was very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's that's how life is too. And what's crazy is a lot of times addicts, what I've found, is that we like to isolate so much that sometimes that causes that relapse.
Mm-hmm.
because we don't want to reach out. That's why a lot of people go to meetings and stuff like that. And then when you get into that spot where you don't want to participate in the meeting, you go to the meeting and you just sit there and you listen. You know what I mean? It's like you get your fix, you go there and you get your fix about how you need to do things and how somebody else it didn't work, and then you go about your business. But a lot of times if you're not reaching out for that help and talking about it and getting it off your chest, I have people that have come through, guests that have come through that have had trauma and situations and not trauma, and and they come in and they haven't spoke about things that have happened in their life in 10, 20 years, and they come in and just full breakdown on camera because this is something they haven't dealt with. And I'm a firm believer, if you're not dealing with your core issues, you're not able to be free. I don't think if you're not dealing with the problems that are in your heart, that have, that unsettling feelings of things, I don't like to be around this. Those, when you start feeling like that, those are core issues of what's going on. You may not have had trauma. Not everybody's had trauma in their life, but what I consider trauma and what you consider trauma are night and day, maybe. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because it could be a lot of things, like from in my testimony, my mom was a full-blown alcoholic, from the day I can remember, and I say remember meaning like 5 years old. We lived out the back of a car, literally. And this isn't something to make up. Like, I remember, on my podcast, on my testimony video, I talked about it. I remember a good day being when I woke up for school. In the back of the car, my brother would give me a bottle of water to brush our teeth. That was a good day. um, I remember parking in front of bars so my mom didn't have to drink and drive, because that was the responsible thing to do. My mom was a good, loving mom. She loved her children, you know what I mean? But, we were poor and alcohol was a real thing. And this is in the early 80s, when things were different. You can bring a kid into a bar. I remember sitting in bars and eating peanuts, and while my mom was drinking a pitcher of beer or two pitchers of beer. So these are real things that we don't look like, oh, this wasn't a big deal as a child, but it was, hey, go get me a beer. And I remember I have pictures I showed on my thing, where I'm holding a beer and people thought it was cute to take pictures. I got a picture of me holding a joint with a line of Coke on the table behind me, that they thought it was cute to take a picture like that.
Mm-hmm.
So these are real things that if you're not dealing with these core issues that I've learned this time around for my addiction, that you're going to find yourself stumbling. You really are. You're going to find something that's, here's Mother's Day, for instance. Mother's Day used to be really hard for me, but I'm just not no more, because I've dealt with the issues that I had to deal with. So
And would you agree that it's ongoing, that perhaps it's part of the fabric of who you are, and dealing with it is so very nuanced, because seeing what it is for what it is part of it. Healing from it, however, is sometimes, left to a power greater than ourselves. And then we just need company along the way while, God is healing us. Other people help, but I think this is where the, mercy of the divine comes in, because one day we're healed. And I don't know about you, but I would not have been able to do that on my own. Even other
absolutely.
people, as well-meaning as they are, and the other addicts, and one alcoholic or addict talking to another does have healing properties. But I think it's because that counteracts the isolation that we talked about before we put
Right.
the camera on.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that
And
isolation.
and a lot of times, what I have a hard time dividing with people when I have guests on is I'm not a huge fan of somebody saying, where they talk about being comfortably numb. You're drinking to forget. You're doing drugs to forget. No, said no one ever. It doesn't work like that. You know what I mean? We do that now. Why? Because it's textbook. What happened was, is you didn't wake up Saturday morning before you decided to become an alcoholic, and before you decided to be an addict, and say, hey, today I think I just want to do some cocaine. Hey, today I think I just want to be an alcoholic. It doesn't work like that.
Right.
You didn't wake up Saturday morning and say, hey, you know what? I can't deal with my father's death. I can't deal with my mother's death. I think I'm just going to become an alcoholic. I think I'm just going to become a drug addict. It doesn't work like that. So
Are you
to
saying it's not a
me,
conscious decision? It's not
I, I,
conscious?
I don't think it is conscious at all. I'm
Yeah.
not a firm believer of that. I'm not, no, I always tell everybody, no one wakes up saying, "Hey, I think I want to be a crackhead today." No one wakes up and says, "I think I want to go to the bar and never turn my life around and just throw everything away I've worked for." No one does that. So to me, that's not something that people. This is and the other one is the hereditary one. That those two things to me, I'm not a buyer. My mom was a full-blown alcoholic. I never had the desire. Now, have I drank and did that? Yes, absolutely. Um, but do I sit back and feel like that's the reason why my life went to crap? No, my life went to crap because I had a crappy life.
This podcast is brought to you by Riman, the best Korean skincare, the best skincare period I've ever used. In my late 40s, I noticed that instead of my makeup looking worn and practically totally off by 5 p.m., it was starting to happen like around noon. Things were smudged. I could see my pores, and the makeup just wasn't sticking anymore. So I stopped wearing most of it. And then I found myself in a situation where I just didn't feel like I could ever be polished, and I couldn't put a dusting of makeup on a Saturday morning. So my skin was dull, it lacked clarity. I had obviously fine lines and wrinkles that come with time. And then I was introduced to the most hydrating skincare that I've ever used. And it is Riman, which means rebirth. It has all the properties of nature along with Western technology. I don't know that much about it. I just use it and I love it. The link to find out more, to shop, is in the show notes. I highly recommend that you try the 2-step cleansing system. It's just 2 products, the moisturizing oil and the snow enzyme cleanser to cleanse your face. And then there's many different choices for tone and of course then moisturizer. There's a regular line and there's an anti-age line. I need all the help I can get, so I use both. I recommend Riman.
Period. That's the truth behind it. It's not, oh, my mom was an alcoholic. My mom messed my no, I messed my
So
life up. I
so
still
in
made those decisions.
the nurture nature argument, you're of the belief of it's the nurture, not the nature.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And like I said, you when you wake up, you make that decision as an alcoholic or a drug addict or whatever the case may
absolutely.
be,
Or it's
porn
or
addict, you make that decision. You have to go and you have to find it. And therefore
well,
it's
I'm going to stop you there because I agree with you that you do have to do all those actions in order to engage in your addiction. But the very beginning, I would almost say I agree with you that we'll stay away from the word choice, but I agree with you. But I think it's more nuanced in that it's not so much that we decide. I think it's the lack of decision of doing the right thing, what you need to do, because it's hard. Life is hard, and we don't know it, but we can do the hard stuff first and then get the reward. Like if you're a pro athlete and then you win the Stanley Cup, or you could get all your reward now, use your drug, and then you do the hard stuff later. Do the hard stuff first, practice discipline, give your life some shape. And rather than going through the platitudes of how we practice life today, I would love to take the listeners on a bit of a story journey with you, Mark. So, I mean, I could go on forever. You've heard me philosophize and then I get carried away. So I'm going to put
we usually talk, and it's usually an hour or
I
more
know,
always together.
I'm going to put a cork in that bottle, folks. I'm sorry. I will stop myself. Back in those first few memories, with with the alcohol, with your mom, living out of the car. Tell me how your life went and when you learned these things that you've learned and when your desire to help others began. So if you can talk to us a
Yeah,
little bit about
abs
your life.
abs absolutely. So, as I said earlier, my mom was a full-blown alcoholic, and I'm not talking about a weekend drinker, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and that was it type of thing. My mom drank every single day. She had a routine from the day I can remember. When I was a child, it was a lot more chaotic because we were really, really poor. We had these things called hotel vouchers, I remember as a child, and the welfare system would give us these hotel vouchers. And every now and then we get those, so we'd actually get to sleep in a hotel every now and then. But I could only imagine, and with all due respect, rest in peace to my mom, but I could only imagine that those probably got sold every now and then for money. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Being honest with you, because we did have a car, and um, I do remember stuff like that. So I kind of remember going through life with my mom, being sleeping in the back of the car, drinking every single day. I do remember my mom at one point gave me up to my grandma because it just was too chaotic, you know. She gave me up to my grandma before I was 5 years old. Um, for some reason, she decided that my grandma wasn't worthy enough to have me and I was her child. I remember a big giant argument about that when I was a kid. And so I ended up staying with my mom for the next 5 or 6 years. And I remember it got so bad, Susan, I could tell you some quick stories, a couple little quick stories that would blow your mind for people that are listening, that are alcoholics and going through that stuff and have children and stuff. And I'll tell you how it goes. I remember when we first got our first place. I was about 8 or 9 years old, I think, when I first actually had a roof over my head. And I changed schools so much that I didn't even want to make friends because we couldn't afford, we'd get to a place, stay there for 30 days, and then couldn't afford the next month's rent. So we would work the system. And I say we because it obviously was seemed like a team. We would stay there.
Mhm.
And then back then you could work the system and get a 30, 60, 90 day because they can't just evict you. They got to give you these things. So we would do that. So my mom, when she found that system out, that's what we did for the next couple of years until they evicted us at 90 days. And then we went back to another spot. She saved up a little bit of
Wow.
money and we found another spot. Um, Mind you, she would constantly always still be drinking. So I'd be at a school for, 60 days, 90 days and have to change schools all over California. Um, and and then I remember when we finally all as a family, and I put this in my testimony, we as a family, we got this place. My grandma, there was a like a triplex place. It had like all these duplexes, two places to each other. It had six of them. My grandma had two, there was two where my grandma lived, and then me and then my brother and my sister-in-law all finally got a place that we could afford, it seemed like, because we were there for, for at least a year. And I remember I hated being home because every time I was at home, my mom, by the time got home from school, she was just completely drunk.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and the abuse wasn't the abuse like you hear about people like she just kicked my ass because she felt like it. If I did something to make her mad or was out of line or something in her eyes that didn't fit, I'd get my ass kicked. I'd get spanked. Um, so, there's that. And then the justification was I was this bad kid because it was like, if I had bad grades, I remember coming home a couple times, walking straight into the room, grabbing a belt, handing her the belt. Why is this? It was because I got a D on in math or something. But I never had no education. You know what I mean? So I
Mhm.
wasn't great at school. Only thing I liked about school was being around other kids, so I didn't have to be at home.
Yeah.
It was so embarrassing though because we couldn't afford clothes. So my mom would always flip my pants inside out, iron patches. She showed me how to iron patches on my own clothes, extend the pants on my clothes because they would be high waters. Um, so stuff like that. I remember going into Payless, and these are just minute stories I'm jumping around on. I remember going in a Payless shoe store, which is like the cheapest shoe store you can find in California. Everywhere is different, but I remember going in there and trying on a pair of shoes, and my mom would put the shoes on me and put my old shoes in the box, and I'd walk out. That's how I got shoes. I remember when I was 10 years old, I got a job selling um, candies and candles and stuff door to door. And for every item I sold, I got $1. Some days I would make $30 and I'd come home and give it to her so she can buy liquor. Um, I remember doing that many times. Very rarely did I keep any of the money. Sometimes I'd lie and say I only made, 25 bucks and I keep $5 for myself. But, in the 80s and 90s, $5 was a lot of money.
Right. Yeah.
So I could get a lot of candy with that. So um, I do remember, as I got older, my brother passed away, was a turning point for my whole family. My brother passed away of AIDS. He got a bad blood transfusion when I was about 11 years old. He was like 23 or something like that, 24 years old when he passed. My mom went, if you can imagine all the stories I'm telling you about being an alcoholic, my mom went full blown into alcoholism further. So anybody that doesn't believe that there's another stage of alcoholism, there
Right.
is. You think you're an alcoholic now, tomorrow can even be worse. So, um, from the minute her routine after that was pretty much get up, she ate a salad. Um, she would eat a salad in the morning, drink a big glass of water, and start drinking all day. Go about through maybe 3 or 4 cases of beer before the end of the day. She never really drank whiskey or any of that stuff. She drank beer. We would save the cans, I remember. I would make $2, $3 to smash. Seemed like 1,000 cans sometimes. And then I'd have to give her all the money and I'd make a couple bucks, $2 out of it usually. Um, as I got older, um, I started getting a really resentment because she had a hard time getting over the death of my brother. So I had a real hard resentment towards her. I pretty much seemed to not exist except unless I got in trouble, stuff like that. So I got in trouble as I went on in my own stuff and my own addiction. I started using when I was about 13, 14 years old, something like that. I started using drugs. Um, and again, I didn't wake up and say, today I want to be a meth head or a crack head or
Yeah.
nothing. It just was presented in front of me and I decided to do it because everyone was doing it. And that's where it was. It wasn't to ease the pain. It wasn't to escape my demons or escape reality. None of that crossed my mind when I did it. But as you had said earlier, I will say this, once I did it, and that's what I was going to go into earlier. Once I did it, it did, it didn't numb the pain because I didn't know what the pain was. And this is the core stuff that I was talking about earlier. If you don't know what the pain is, how can you say I'm drinking to
Mm-hmm.
cover the pain? How can
Mm-hmm.
I'm using to cover the pain? You don't know what the pain is. In your mind, you think, oh, I'm going through this or that. That's the pain you're dealing with. It's in my mind, this is my theory about it. You're not doing that. That's not what you're doing. There's a hitting core. That's why it's called core
But
issue that you're dealing with.
don't you just feel better? Like, don't you
You
somewhere along the
you
way,
do,
and
you do,
you,
but
you start to
it's
lose
the
some of
it's
the
the dopamine though.
faculties.
It's the
Hmm.
dopamine though. It's the dopamine and the euphoria of the drug that
Yeah.
I posted a post a few months back about this, this guy. He's like doing it and I watched this man, I can't think of the name of it. But anyways, I watched this YouTube video on this with this psychologist, and the way she explained it was, you have a scale in your body, and the way the scale works is this: is as long as you one day, let's say you drink or use drugs or whatever the case may be, you take from one side of the scale and you put on the other side of the scale, which is your euphoria, your dopamine, and it starts weighing in, and you just feel this like, oh my God, yes. And then all of a sudden now, when that's gone, you just took away from the other side of the balance beam. So now you're unbalanced. And now you have to get back to get balanced. You take away from here again to put more on the other side to feel balanced. And before you know it, you're constantly taken from one side and you're never balanced anymore.
Well, the
The way she
body, yeah, the body will. Alcohol explained by whatchamacallit, Porter, William Porter. He explained it similar. The scales, I think I've heard the scales description. He had two legs. And if you're standing as a person on two legs, one side's, and I'm filling in a blank here that you created. One side's stimulants, the other side's depressants. So, because alcohol molecularly is a depressant, when you drink more alcohol, what ends up happening is your body will give you stimulants. That's why it feels like fuel in an
Mm-hmm.
engine. And people are confused because they say, "But it makes me feel energetic." But it's a depressant. But the reason is your body's own inner pharmacy will create more stimulants because of that depressive effect of alcohol. So then you feel all stimulated and then you get back to balance. So you do get back to balance, but your body's created more dopamine. But unfortunately, when the alcohol wears off, your stimulants are super high, which is why you
Right.
can't sleep. You might pass out, but then you wake up and you're all stimulated and sweaty.
Right.
That's because the stimulants, you've been overexposed to those stimulants. And
Right.
then the body's always looking for homeostasis. So I
Right.
like alcohol. I like the two leg example because, like you said, you're unbalanced with your two
Yeah.
legs. If you have depressant and the body's creating stimulants, then it gets unbalanced again with too much stimulants and not enough depressant. And he explains it very well in Alcohol Explained. That's literally the name of the book. And
Yeah.
then he updated it with Alcohol Explained 2. And I highly recommend those reads if you're interested in
Absolutely.
that sort of thing. Because, and Mark, you are very inquisitive. I love it into why. When I was getting sober, the 2 or 3 times ago, my sponsor used to say, and I think she was right. She said it doesn't matter. So I had to work for a while, not really worrying about why, just doing the
Right.
next right thing to stay sober. But I think that in the next phase of your development, which is where perhaps you are now, I think there is a moment where you go into, I think it's good to go into why. And that's where
Right.
you've gone a little bit. Hey,
Oh,
wouldn't you say?
absolutely. Absolutely. And and what I learned around, see, I never got the chance to go through any rehabilitations or sober living homes or any of the stuff that's offered out here nowadays. I didn't have that. When you
How'd you
got to
get
the point of,
sober? So go back. You started using drugs, and I interrupted you because we talked about why we do it and how we get unbalanced. But go back there. It's what your friends were doing. Perhaps you wanted to be sort of part of the crowd. You were just doing what everybody did. Is that right?
yeah, so
Yeah.
that's pretty much it. I mean, that's the basis of it, that without going into too depth, but I started using. Um, I wasn't really we lived in this house that was just really tiny. I started getting in trouble once my brother died because it just like everybody was just off the rocker pretty much. Everybody lost it. My sister-in-law lost it. My mom, my whole family just lost it. Like so I was done. I was pretty much done myself, you know what I mean? And I started hanging out with bad kids and doing bad things and I always try to avoid that scene because I knew better again.
Mhm.
But at this point I didn't even care anymore. Like I just gave up type of thing. I wasn't depressed. I was more depressed because I felt betrayed because I had already lived this just this horrible life. You know what I mean? Like I say that now, but you would have asked me 30 years ago, I wouldn't have told you that because I didn't know what a horrible life was. You know what I mean? This was normalized, and that's why I said
Yeah.
about people that have children that are alcoholics. This is a story really that, I could sit here for an hour and tell you a full depth story of that will blow your mind. Um, so anyways, being about 13, 14 at this age, started doing drugs. Got in trouble. I was still going to school, started selling drugs, started going through the whole process, got in trouble a few times with the law, got out. Didn't really care, I didn't really see a point of getting right or doing right. I didn't see a point of it. There was nothing. I had no education. I knew I was real smart as far as like even what I do present myself today, I had this when I was a child. I always question everything. I want to learn. I'm hungry for knowledge on my level though, on my terms, should I say. I think that's the best way to say it. On my terms. You know what I mean? Like I like to question things and why and who and how and you know what I mean? So I've always had that. So as I got older, and when I say older, I was about I don't know, 17, 18 years old. I got in trouble with the law. I went to prison. I went to prison. I got a 3-year sentence. I did all 3 years of it in California prison. Um,
What was that
I
like?
got sucked. It sucked. It
Yeah.
really did.
Yeah.
It really was. It was I was young, and the prisons in California are everything you hear about. All the stories you hear, that is exactly when I went to prison. At least it was like that. I hear it's different now, but when I went to prison in the 90s, it was like that. It was every bit of that. You were either part of something or you weren't. And
The gangs, you mean?
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. So I went through that whole spill. Luckily, and it sucks to say, luckily, I had given in trouble at that point in my life a few times before that. So I was mentally and physically prepared for that prison. I had worked my way up to that,
Right.
professionalism.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
so I turn around and I go to prison. I get out of while I'm in prison though, my mom let me back up. When before I went to prison, I got in trouble into a position where I could call it juvenile hall in California. So what this is it's pretty much prison for kids. And I got a sentence to a year in there for drugs. And I was fortunate enough to be where the facility I got put at was about 30 minutes away from where my mom lived. I was about 16 years old, and my mom would come down every single weekend to see me, and which was odd because, like I said, our relationship was good, but it wasn't great. Um, at 16 years old, I was already drinking and partying with my mom at this point. It can beat them, join them, right?
Right.
Um, so she'd come down and see me. She'd buy my snacks and we talk. And like 2 weekends went by, she didn't come see me. And I was like, what the heck's going on? So I call home when we get our phone calls, and then she answers. I'm like, hey, you gonna come see me? She's like, yeah, I wasn't feeling good, this and that. So I went to the doctors. I was like, oh, all right. 2 more weeks go by. She don't see me. So it's been about a month since I've seen her.
Yeah.
And she comes over and she comes in and sees me. I remember the food we had. She brought me nachos and some licorice. And we're sitting there talking. I open my soda and we get to talking. And it's so weird. And I don't mean to come off the subject, but it's so weird that key pivots in your life, or key points in your life, you can almost remember to detail, but I can't remember where the hell I put my keys. You know what I mean? Like it's so weird.
Right.
I can, Suzanne, I can remember, and this is weird because I'm talking about it right now again, and I tell my testimony quite a bit. I could taste the soda right now while I'm talking to you. I remember it was a grape soda. You ever have a grape soda, and then
Yeah,
you have
for
that
sure.
back taste almost
Aftertaste.
into your nose? Yeah, I could
Yeah.
taste it right now. So it was a grape soda, nachos, and licorice. I remember sitting there. That's weird. And I remember talking to her, and she pulled out this letter that she had got from her doctor saying she only had like 6 months to live. And
Mm.
I mean, I'm in jail. I was devastated. Like I'm not gonna be out. Like I still have like about 7 months to go, so I'm not gonna make it. How could you do that to me? You know what I'm saying? Like, how could you? Whoa, what the hell? So,
Hmm.
I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. So I did my best. I just told her, you need to come see me as much as you can. And every time she came and see me, it was just horrifying. It was terrible because I didn't know if this is going to be my last time. So her liver was 75% shut down at this point in life. She had chronic cirrhosis of the liver.
Hmm.
Kidneys were on the verge of failing. Um, so now push forward. I get out. She doesn't pass. I get out. I'm get out, and she's still doing the same thing. Did she stop drinking? Did she stop any of that? No,
No.
absolutely not. Because she's not this wake up and I want to have a drink today, maybe type of person. This is I At this point in life, it's like a heroin addict.
Survival. It's
Yes,
survival.
because
Yeah.
yes, absolutely. So I get out, and do you think I stop? No, I don't stop because I'm already so addicted to the addiction of what I'm doing. That's what I do.
Well, it's
I know.
survival, but Mark, it's survival as well. When we're maybe having to survive because our alcohol level has to be a certain level to survive. If you stop, you'll die. But also emotionally, I think there's a level where we have to also be, to use the term that maybe you don't like, numbed out, but we do have to for survival. Because if we have, an uprising of thoughts and emotions. That's where the people are going crazy that you see,
Mm,
that when people in the street that we've seen that look like, sorry to use the old word, but like they're going crazy, like they're turning in circles, they're talking to each ourselves, they're not high. I have
right.
often thought that they're sober, and that's why they're going crazy, is because you can't handle it for the nervous system and everything if it's used to having a certain level of drug in our system. The tolerance has
Absolutely.
been built up, and then you just take it away. Like, it's cruel. We won't go into that because the
It's
government,
a whole nother,
yeah,
a whole nother
the
road,
government sanctioned user places. But that's,
right?
I just wanted to encourage you and say that when you got out of prison and you go right back to using, well, of course you did. That's also survival, just like your mom. That's all I was saying.
Right. Well, and the crazy part is, it's kind of like you put earlier, when you talk about the mice and stuff with the cocaine, the thing is, if you take that away from them, I would imagine, I'm not a scientist, but I would imagine if you took that away from them and put them back in their boring cage, would they be happy? Probably not.
Well, they might just
And
die.
again,
They might stop
they
eating
might
and
just die.
die. They
Right,
might just
exactly.
die.
But and so in my mind, the justification was, can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I hear my phone's dying somewhere. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I got my
No
headphones are
problem.
dying. I did
Yeah.
a long podcast yesterday. So my justification at the end of the day is the fact that I think that that's what I knew and I was good at, and I loved the feeling of what it brought me.
Of
I had
course.
people that really loved me,
Yeah.
quotation, right? People that really loved me for what I did. And I sold drugs and I was good at it. And so I ran back to that. It wasn't to cover up the
Well,
pain.
it
I
also
just,
makes money. Like, money makes the
yeah,
world go round.
absolutely. So to jump back into on topic, I got out of prison. I went back to doing what I do. Still staying pretty tight knit with my mom though, because I knew that that letter still had some weight to it. Keeping an eye on her. I already had moved out by the time I was 15, so all this stuff is happening while I'm living on the streets. Um, but I am going to visit her on a regular, despite what I'm doing, and she's already accepted what I do because there's nothing else she could do but accept it. So I go and get in trouble around 18, 17, 18 years old. I think I'm a juvenile. I think I'm 17 because if I remember correctly, I lied just so I could go to adult jail because I got tired of going to kid jail. Um, so I lied. So they sent me to prison 3 years. While I'm in prison, my mom writes me the whole time, of course, stays by my side, talking to me. Um, I'm about to get out, and excuse me, she tells me she gets another diagnosis that that she's really sick and that she needs a fine liver at this point, right? So my mom has this disease called hemophilia, which is a
Hmm.
bleeding disorder,
Yeah.
missing a factor that clots your blood.
Right.
So which everybody that knows, liver and kidneys and all these all play a big part in everything. So I get out, which is I get out. She's into a new home. I get out, and the cool part is I get out, and she hands me $1,500 and a little trailer outside of her home where she lived. Um, and I didn't do drugs while I was in prison. I really, really wanted to get my life together because I'm so tired of jail. I'm so tired of everything. And my mom's really probably gonna die this time. So I move into this trailer. Things are just, I mean, really going good. She gives me a car. I remember she gave me $1,500. She bought me a little trailer. She had saved up the 3 years that I was locked up, and it was the most beautiful thing that she probably had ever did for me, besides giving me life. Um, and I remember one day I went into the house. They had a one bedroom. Excuse me, I'm probably choked up. I went into the house and I walked in there to go to the bathroom because my camper didn't have a restroom that I could use in there. So I went into the house and I walked into the bathroom and I don't know if you're doing video or just audio, but there was literally um 6 inches, I'm gonna say without exaggerating, it was probably higher than that, 6 inches of foam when people pee, that little foam that you get on
Oh,
the
right,
on the
right.
water top, there was 6 inches of
Wow.
thick foam. I'm not talking about just like a little spot. I'm talking
Yeah,
about the whole
yeah.
bottom of the toilet of foam.
Wow.
And it was yellow. And I was like, what? I've never seen nothing like that in my life. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So I finished going, and I'm flushing the toilet. Obviously it's not going down. I'm
right.
like, I walk out, hey mom, what's that? You know what I mean? How long's that been going on? You know what I mean? Like what's that about? And she goes, I don't know. I talked to the doctor. Well, come to find out, her liver's not processing nothing no more.
Right.
There's like nothing. We're down to like less than 2% of liver function, which she should have been pretty much dead already with that kind of those numbers.
Yeah.
Um, so what are we going to do? There's nothing we could do. They said that potentially that you could take another piece of a liver from somebody else, do an operation, and potentially it could work like that. Well, what are we waiting for? I could have did this. I've already been out for like 2, 3 months. Um, we could have did this already. You know what I mean? I'm healthy. I've been off drugs for years now. You know what I mean? And I don't drink. I don't do nothing. Let's hold on. So I contact the doctor on my own because she's not giving me the whole details. So I tell the doctor, hey, like I'm a full candidate. Like I'm her son, you know what I mean? We have both have hemophilia. You know what I mean? Let's make this happen. And he's like, hey, well, the problem with that is her liver's too polluted and it would reject the liver and we'd be doing an operation for nothing and risking
Right.
and risking her because there's still potential that she could bleed to death and I could bleed to death from the surgery. So there we are. So now I'm trying to find some work, trying to get a job. And one morning I woke up and I got up and I went inside to go make some coffee. And she's like, hey, I don't feel good. I think we should go down to the hospital. I was like, all right, cool. So we go down to the hospital. I take her down there. I get down there, Susanna, and I won't go into it because it's pretty emotional. I don't want to be like that today. We go down there and my mom passes away within 3 days. Um, and for those that are listening to this or watching this, however it may be, and it's crazy because you can watch videos of people on drugs and them ODing or dying or whatever the case may be. And if you want to get high, you're going to get high. If you want to drink, you're going to drink, period. I'm a firm believer of that as well. But let me tell you this for anybody that I can reach, um, it is the most horrifying, horrific, whatever word that you can imagine in your head, the worst word possible, way to die. It is. I've seen people get shot. I've seen people get stabbed. I've seen a lot of things in my life. I mean, I've seen a lot of people die. I watched my brother die. Um, that was the most ugliest way to go. And for me, for alcoholism, a lot of times I'm like that deterred me from drinking,
Right.
or jumping into it because so it was a 3-day process is how it went. Liver shut down. First day we were totally good, and I'm gonna sound like, excuse my language, I'm gonna sound like a piece of shit when I say this, but the doctor came in and told me, he's like, hey, there's nothing we can do, like absolutely nothing. You know what I mean? Um, Enjoy your time. That's what he told me. So the first day, my mom is a fanatic for tuna sandwiches. She loved tuna sandwiches. So I tell her, I'm talking to her like I'm talking to you right now on the first day, day one, we're at the hospital. And I was like, what are we going to do? So we have this beautiful talk. We talked all day, the whole day. It was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon to like 11 o'clock at night. We stayed up talking and telling me stuff that she's never told me in my life, which was probably one of the coolest days ever. I sneak off and tell her, what do you want to do? I sneak off, which mind you, she hasn't drank all day. I sneak off, I go get a tuna sandwich and I bring a beer back to the hospital.
Yeah. Well, she probably needs one.
I mean, and like I said, I probably sound like a piece of shit, but you
Not
know
at
what?
all. She needs one
That,
because it's less comfortable if you just don't
yeah,
have like the minimum, and she's going to die
yeah.
anyway, so she might as well be comfortable.
That's how I looked at it.
Absolutely.
It
Yeah.
sucks when I look back at it now. It's
No.
sad, but you know what? But it is what it is. I would do it again. Be
Hmm.
honest with you, I would do it again. Even in
I
where
would
I'm
do
at
it.
in my life, in my recovery, I would do it again. So I give her a beer, tuna sandwich. She sneaks off into the bathroom, drinks the beer, slams the beer, eats a tuna sandwich. One beer, Susanna, completely obliterated drunk. No
Yeah.
liver, no liver,
Yeah, that's
nothing to
right.
filter it, nothing to
Right.
filter it. That's how I knew. She drank one beer. It was like a taller one, of course.
Yeah.
So it's probably two beers technically. But she's drunk. But when my mom was drunk, she was a functioning drunk, I guess you can say. She wasn't like a
Right.
stumble drunk. That makes
Right.
sense. Like she could probably sit here and do this with you right now if she was drunk. That's
Yeah.
how that kind of drunk she was. Um, and I remember sitting there with her and still talking to her, and we had these cool conversations. And the she fell asleep around 11 or 12 o'clock, and I met my brother. My brother came down to the hospital that night, and I talked to him. And when I say my brother is my best friend for like he's been my best friend for like 30 years. And he came down to the hospital to check on me and everything, and we talked, and then he left. And I went back in the room and I laid down, and I we woke up in the morning. It was probably about 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning. They came in, and I looked at her, and overnight, it had seemed like she gained, I'm just gonna say 40 pounds.
Right. Water retention. Yeah.
Wow. It was so crazy. So we woke up, she woke up in the morning, we ate a little breakfast, and she's like, "Hey, how are you doing?" I'm doing good, mom, and she's like, we sat there, I put on what's that? The Price is Right on the
Yeah.
TV, and we started watching that, and I turn around and I'm sitting there, and it's about 11, 12 o'clock, something like that. And she looked over at me and she goes, "Isn't that funny, David?" Which is my brother that passed. She goes, "Isn't that funny, David?" And I looked at her, and my mom, like any parent, was just horrible with names, you know. So I thought it was just like a whatever.
Right. Calling you by the wrong name. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I just thought it was whatever. So I didn't trip on it. So like 2 minutes later, David. She goes, "David, what?" She started talking about something that happened, obviously between them, because I didn't know the conversation, and I didn't realize that she was losing her mind. Like dementia kicked in. Like this
Well,
dementia kicked
but
in.
wait, they say that your dead relatives visit you right before you die. So who are you to say that she's losing her mind? David could have been sitting on the edge of her bed.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. I'm with you. I'm with you. But it
Yeah,
was like it was so freaky. You know what I'm saying? Like
for
so.
sure.
So I'm sitting there, but she's talking to me like I'm somebody else, which is my brother. Talking about stories I didn't know about. And then somewhere around later in the afternoon, we ate. It's like 2, 3 o'clock. We ate, and when then all of a sudden she started talking to me normal again. She's
Right.
like, "Hey," I said, "Well, what do you want to do, mom? We can't be here. You know what I mean? Because they already told me we had to go because they wanted to put her in hospice, but the doctor told me he's like, I don't think she's gonna last to hospice. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So what do you want to do?" And so I asked my mom. Now that she's coherent and calling me by my name, I asked her, "What do you want to do?" And she's like, "Hey, I want to go to my mom's house. My grandma's house." Um, in my mind, I'm like, dude, that's like 2 hours away. You know what I mean? Like I'm scared to move her. I'm just things are like, and within that time, I told you where I feel like she gained 40 pounds. She's probably gained another five. I just see her just swelling up. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And so I finally the hospice nurse comes in. It's the evening, and at that point at the night, she that was the last time I talked to her. Her telling me she wanted to go to my grandma's house. It was the last time I talked to her. She didn't know who I was anymore after that. Completely called me five other people. Didn't know where she was at. And could you imagine that? I mean, honestly, could you
Wow.
imagine what that, you
No.
know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, you're talking within, that's insane. It's just such a
Yeah.
just mind-boggling how crazy and how insane that is. So anyways, the hospice nurse gets us an ambulance to get a ride down to my grandma's. They set up a bed down there. It's about 6 o'clock, second day. Um, she says we'll transport her in the morning, about 10 or 11 o'clock, and we'll go from there. So they already had a bed set up down there at my grandma's house. Um, she went to sleep about 6 that night. And I didn't, that was it. Like I said, last time I talked to her, that was the last thing she said to me. Um, and the next morning her eyes were open, but she couldn't even talk. She didn't say nothing. She just looked at me and she could move her eyes around. I don't know, obviously, what was going through her head or what, you know what I mean? They transported, we got in the ambulance, long story short. We get down to my grandma's. She probably, without exaggerating, third day now, um, she's probably 100 pounds more than she was when she went in the hospital. 3 days, 100 pounds.
Wow.
It took three
Wow.
of us, and my mom was, from drinking, she was a little heavier, but not.
No, yeah,
Me and
yeah.
one other person definitely could have picked her up easily. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like, I
yeah,
mean, it
yeah.
wasn't like that. It took
Hmm.
three of us, two grown men and myself, to pick her up with the sheet onto the new bed.
Right.
Um, which was just to see it. I mean, I'm trying to give you a visual, to
Yeah.
visualize it, but it's not doing good. It's just it was just so insane. And we get her in the bed. The nurse shows up like 30 minutes later. They leave. The nurse shows up 30 minutes later, tells me how we're going to do this. And we're going to clean her up. And then I'm going to come and check on you guys every single day. Make sure, she's as comfortable as possible. So we put the TV at the end. I get up. She leaves. The nurse goes out to the living room, fill out paperwork. I go in the kitchen, grab a 7 Up. My grandma had just made me a little bit of food. I went back in and sat down next to her. And the nurse came in. She goes, "Hey, I gotta go to my next appointment. Can we go ahead and clean her up? I'm probably gonna need help for us to roll her over."
Yeah.
We're talking 3 days, and I'm telling you that I'm having to roll her over. Like 3 days ago,
Yeah.
we were having a conversation like me and you are. It was
Right.
just
Yeah,
mind
yeah.
blowing for me. It was
Yeah. Yeah.
so
So
messed up in my head.
fast.
Yes,
Yeah.
and and her eyes are open though. Her eyes are completely open. So I go put my food in the living room. I come back in the bedroom and I help the nurse. And, I don't want to see my mom naked. You know what I mean? So
Of
I
course.
kind of I kind of
Yeah.
grabbed her arm and I pull her so the nurse can wipe her and do this. And so I had to push her away from me so she could clean the other side of her. So I
Yeah.
grabbed her shoulder and I pushed her up and she went to the bathroom on herself.
Hmm.
And and when I freaked out. I freaked out. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? Like
Hmm.
I freaked out. So when I did that, I was like, oh my God. So she cleaned her and I look and my mom, like this tear came down her eye. And
Hmm. It's okay.
but yeah. Anyway,
Mm.
she passed like, I don't even know, like 2 minutes after that. And so,
Mm.
you talk about these issues, those are the things. But now to get into something different, after she passed, it was the ugliest thing ever to see somebody go through, because afterwards I hear about all the stories about how much pain she was in every day and how much she was going through, these things while she was trying to get sober every now and then, but just didn't work, hours of sobriety type of thing.
Yeah.
Um, I stayed sober for a while. I stayed clean and sober for a while. I didn't drink, I didn't do this, that. I fell right back into it as quick as possible, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? I tried. I had this vision I was going to do the right thing, but um, I didn't care. And now that I felt like I had lost everything, you know, despite the fact the stuff that I had been through with my mom. Um, I already had lost my brother. I had lost my mom. Um, my grandma
Hmm.
was a different story, but so I ran right back into drugs and doing the same thing again. Um, I got clean and sober, and my brother moved to Colorado, and he sent for me because he's like, dude, you're gonna lose your shit. My mom passed in April of '99. I moved to Colorado in October of '99, and I did good. I did good for about 6 months. And this is what I tell everybody, and when I do my interviews with them, you can't run from you, period.
No.
That is the most craziest thing about this ugly thing we call addiction, alcoholism, whatever it may be, the addiction you have. You cannot run from you. You are the problem, period. I
Yes.
came to Colorado, you can't do a geographical or demographical or whatever you might want to call it. You cannot do that kind of a change and expect change because
Yeah.
you are the change, period. So I moved to Colorado, and guess what? There's still drugs here, and I'm still here, you know?
Wherever you go, there you are.
So I did. I actually started drinking pretty heavily, not an everyday thing, but when I drank to be
Oblivion.
drunk. Yep,
Hmm.
because I hated life, and that was my
Hmm.
excuse. Um, I didn't realize how much I had been through in my life at that point, and that was one of the reasons that I'm clean today is because of that. You know what I mean? Is because now I say about those core issues is because I bottled everything up. And so when I drank to get drunk. When I did drugs,
Hmm. I
I
see what
did
you're
drugs
saying.
until, you know what I mean?
Hmm. Hmm.
And it was easy to tuck it away. And it wasn't like, oh, because a lot of people say, I drink because my mom passed and I just can't deal with it no more. I lost a child, or you know what I mean? Like these devastating things that you can't minimize. But I don't think that it's fair to use them. Do you get what I'm
Hmm.
saying? I don't think it's fair to
Yeah.
use them because it's still a choice, like you said. Do you have
Right.
that urge? My mom had that choice when she woke up. It sucks. You got to go through the detox. You got to go through the sickness. You got to go through that stuff to
Well,
make
and
the
also I
change.
think the world comes up and meets you there and encourages you and says you deserve a
Right.
drink. So that doesn't help. The
No,
messaging,
the legal drug.
yeah, the messaging that we get doesn't help. I'm not saying,
Right.
especially post COVID, we can stand up against all that and say, wait a minute. I see I said something on a podcast the other day that I just thought of, which is my experiences are facts and they're valid. Like we're
Right.
taught that if we're not the scientist, that we can't talk about the effects of alcohol and we can't, warn people against, oh, we're not scientists. Trust the science. You know what I say to that? Bullshit. That's what
I'm
I
with you.
say. And I
Yep.
say, when I do this, this happens. When I do that, that happens. And that's what I trust, me and my God. And
Mm.
people will come and go in your life, and
Yep.
you can trust them at times, but the one that you can rely on is yourself.
Absolutely.
And
Accountability for sure.
yeah, and when we stop being able to trust ourselves, because I think that that's what happens with us addicts, Mark, is
Right.
what's the most devastating thing aside from a horrible death? Sorry to reiterate that, but I think one of the most devastating things about addiction is losing the trust of ourselves. Not being able to
Yeah.
trust yourself, that's
Right.
so huge because that's
Right.
heartbreaking because the number one relationship in your life is with yourself, you
Hmm.
know?
I
And we
agree.
really and you really, really, really felt that when you're probably like me, very, very conscious of letting yourself down when you were using.
Oh yeah. And so I got a few minutes left. So to touch base is where it went. So after that, I went to prison again.
For what? For
This
selling drugs or
for selling drugs. I went right back to the same
yeah,
thing, selling drugs, and this time on a next level thing.
right.
This time they handed me some real time. I got in a high speed chase with the police, um, and
That was my
I
phone. Don't worry about it.
okay. I had to keep
Yeah,
switching out these headphones because I didn't charge
no
them.
worries. I don't hear you anymore. No,
No, oh, man, I'm so sorry.
that's okay. I hear you now. Yeah, let's just finish up. So, how we got to prison, and how was it the
So
last time you went to prison?
yeah, so I got a 13-year sentence.
Wow.
I did 5.5 years in prison on that. I got out. I went to a rehabilitation center, one of the hardest in the United States. It was called Pier One. It was insane. That's probably a whole nother topic. That could probably be a whole nother episode by itself, how insane this program was. Stand at walls, stare at walls, sleep deprivation, all the punishments that you can
Oh,
imagine. Shave your head when you were out of line. Before I got to the program, they used to put people in diapers. Like it was intensive
yeah.
treatment. So long story short, I went through there, but some of the things I did get from there saved my life. I will give them that. I'm 100% on that. One of the big things is learning how to deal with your core issues. That is a huge thing. I'm a firm believer in it. I think the other thing is this, is if you have something on the back burner, and I say this to everybody on my podcast, you have something on the back burner, you're always going to go to the back burner. Meaning this, if you cook something on the front burner and it doesn't taste good and you had something on the back burner like macaroni, guess what you're going to eat tonight? Macaroni, right? Because why? It was on the back burner. You know what I mean? So in order to succeed in your recovery, you cannot have nothing on the back burner. That has to be off. It has to be a main dish, and that is it. And that's your recovery, period. That is the
Got it.
secret to success. I promise you, that is the secret to success. You cannot have nothing on the back burner. If this doesn't work for me, I'm dead. That's what your story needs to
Got
sound
it.
like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You can't have a trap door.
Exactly. You can't sit here and say, hey, if this doesn't work for me, I'm going to try this. No, there is no try this no more. This is what's going to work for me, period. That's in the end of the story. As long as I
very
have
good.
that, it's kind of like men when they cheat. I have this girlfriend, but I'm still kind of talking to this other girl just in case this don't work out, right? Guess what? In my mind, this is probably not going to work out anyways because I got my girlfriend over here.
Right. It's almost like it's your very attitude is imbued with failure just by the very fact that you know that you have an escape. Like your attitude changes.
Absolutely.
Your program changes, and your vulnerability and willing to show up and share all of yourself is the only thing also that's going to make other people invest in you. People are not going to invest in you. They're going to always be leaning back if you don't put all of yourself into your recovery, and you need all of them and all of it to get better. I agree with you. Look at what I said before we started. I had a guest booked a couple of weeks ago and he wasn't getting back to me. And I'm not saying I know how he died, but he passed away. And I suspect when an addict passes away, even if you don't know the story, I suspect that he passed away of his addiction. He was mid-30s. This thing's deadly, man. And you know it. You know it. And that's why you're alive today, ironically.
Yep. So my passion is trying to save 1 out of 100, and my being honest with you, I'm going to toot my own horn right now. I am probably 20, 30 episodes into my podcast stuff, and I'm running at like 50-60% of people that have rejoined with their families, their children.
Wow, that's wonderful.
That have used this time to deal with their core issues that
tell me about the start, because we're running out of time today, and we'll talk again.
I gotta go.
Tell me about the start of your podcast when you said, okay, this is what I'm going to do, and then we can go to the point where you tell us about how we can connect with you. So tell us about your podcast.
Real quick, I run a podcast called Beyond the Struggle Podcast. We are on YouTube and Facebook. I wanted to start this a long time ago. I run a business out here in Denver, Colorado, Limb Walkers Tree Service. So I run that first and foremost. So running that family stuff has kind of always been like that. But, I've been getting closer to God, and I felt a tug on my heart to do what I passionately want to do, and that is try to save people. And meaning helping them save themselves is the way I would put it. So I started this January 25th, which is my clean day. I had 20 years this year. So I started. Congratulations. Thank you. I started my podcast on that day, just obviously to be able to help me remember and to kind of give me ground to stand on. I'm a firm believer. Everything is based on a solid foundation, and what better foundation than to put it on a 20-year recovery is how I felt about it. We've had great success rate on everything we do. In the beginning, I was minimizing how this little small podcast, but I just did an interview with a gentleman in Kenya. So I'm God's rectifying my brain to show me that it's not a small podcast. When you're doing interviews from Kenya to here, that's not small. That means you're reaching out to people across the world. You're in Canada.
Absolutely. And you reached out to me. Yes.
Yes. These aren't small steps. And so, I want to have these resources for people like yourself that, know and can be knowledgeable about stuff. And when I seen the stuff that you do, it really intrigued me because me and you, we could sit here for hours and talk, as we always do.
I love talking.
anytime we get on the phone, we can talk for hours and just chop it up. So it's like we're a lot alike when it comes to things, and I love that about you. And for me, people that I want to be part of what I have going on, that's where I'm at with it. To be part of the team, you have to have a passion for this and really mean it, and you know what it's like. I have real life counselors. I have sex abuse counselors. I have sexual forensic scientists on board that are counselors. I have drug administration counselors. I have everything from mental health counselors. I also have rehabilitation homes in different states in the United
So
States.
how do people get in touch with you? Like if they're just newly sober, it sounds like you are a resource for people who are newly sober. So how would they get in touch with you? And perhaps you can help either have them on the cast, and even if not, maybe plug them into something that would help them. How do they get in touch with you? What's the best way?
Facebook is my main platform. You can reach out to us, Beyond the Struggle podcast on Facebook.
Okay.
Is my main platform. I love that platform just because everyone uses it still, at least
Yeah.
everyone in our generation, I would say.
Yeah.
I do have a website. It's beyondthestruggle.life.
Okay.
On there, there's resources on there. You can reach out to us on there. The fastest and quickest way, though, is through Facebook. Facebook is our main thing. We are on YouTube as well. Beyond the Struggle podcast on there if you want to check out any of the videos, or if anybody wants to do a testimonial interview, we run testimonial interviews for anything that anybody's been through. You don't even have to be an addict or an alcoholic. You can be one person that lived with an addict or alcoholic as well, because I feel in my life that those people get overlooked as well.
Absolutely. And you are that as well. Sorry, living.
Absolutely.
Keep going. Living.
Yeah, I think that those people get overlooked, and having to live with an alcoholic or an addict is just as much trauma as being in one, if not more. Be honest with you, because again, nobody woke up in the morning and said, "Hey, I want to be an enabler to someone I love." But guess what? That's what you end up being.
Happens.
When you love somebody. It sucks to say it, but that's what you have to put those words on it. When you love somebody, you will do whatever it takes to make sure you know that they love you. And supporting an addiction or alcoholism or whatever it may be.
And love has levels. There is the level of enabling that we love somebody, but then there's that deeper, truer love where we are able to let go and we are able to allow them to stand on their own 2 feet. But that's the deeper love that perhaps by going through addiction, we've been able to learn. Perhaps we need to be taught that by other people in our lives, like you, Mark, who are out there teaching people what real love is, which is allowing you to tell your story. And we're just going to give you a platform, right?
Yep. And also for those that are listening, Susanna has an interview on my podcast as well. And we have a breakout video as well, a live breakout video that is awesome. You guys should go watch.
And you know what? I'll include them in the show notes. I'll put your YouTube channel, Beyond the Struggle. I'll put the Facebook with the proper spelling of your name, and I'll put our chat in the show notes so people can tune into.
Sounds great, because there's some really good stuff on there. And I'm sure me and you could meet every Saturday morning and
right.
Have a
coffee.
Video. And talk about some. Yep, I imagine we could.
Well, and I would like to, before I forget, I would like to interview you about the program, the 5 years, some of that you had said that we could do an aside. Let's do an episode on that, because there will be other people that have gone through that program that would perhaps like to have some solace with other people like yourself who have gone through it. And maybe they need to talk about what they went through. Maybe they're still processing. I'm not sure, but something's telling me that we could do a whole series on rehabilitation and what that looks like. Not for your whole life, but just in the short term when you first get sober, Right.
Yeah. I think, one of the big things is if you want it, you're going to get it. If you don't want it, you're not going to get it. I do have other friends that do podcasts, and they've been podcasting for years that do recovery stuff. I've talked to some really big names and stuff. And again, they're in the same boat as a lot of them. They won't interview people if they're not serious. I'm on a different aspect. I don't, I think if you want it, I want to help you want it. And I'm, like I said, one of my big things, I don't talk about it, the whole thing. I say about the core values, core beliefs. But I don't talk about it a lot because I try to bring them out of you. That's my job. The intense,
Yeah.
um, the stuff I'm gonna have you do, talk about what happened in your life to this. That's doing it without telling you about it. That's what the reality is. I want to talk about that trauma that happened. I want to talk, and it sucks to say it. I want to talk about that uncle that molested you. I really do, because
Mm-hmm.
you need to get that off of you. You need to.
Mm-hmm.
It's not yours to hold.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know.
And it's going to
You
help
know
somebody.
it's going to way help you. I can't tell you. I wish out of the respect of my guest, I can't name names, but there's so many of them that have told me I needed that. I really did. I hope that helps somebody. I'm like, it doesn't matter. It helped you. You didn't realize, you just talked about losing your mom, stuff like that, or you just talked about losing your child, or you talked about being molested to a point where you thought it was okay. You were molested so much that you thought it was okay to be molested for 5 years straight. You needed to talk about that, because why? Because we in a society don't give a chance for anybody to talk about it, because we're ostracized about it. You know what I mean? We're
Or
looked
we're
down
in
on.
denial. Well, not only
Yeah,
that, we're in denial
yeah.
that,
Well,
that it
how.
happens as common as it does, happens as often as it does.
Yep. So now I got to get off and pray for you to church, and pray
Yeah.
for these people that are on
I
here.
gotta go too. I gotta go to church as well. So I will put those in the show notes. It was a pleasure talking with you, Mark. We will talk
Yes,
to you very soon, and you take care of yourself.
absolutely, absolutely. And I wanted to share with you right quick. I will be doing some outside interviews this summer, some live interviews for those that are watching. So if you want to follow the page, we're going to be doing live breakout videos every week on our Facebook and YouTube page. Every single week, we'll be doing at least one breakout video. I will still be posting testimonial interviews on there if you guys want to watch. Everything from addiction to alcoholism to gamblers to whatever it is, you can imagine it. They'll be on there. So you're welcome. Come
Thank
watch or
you.
come join
Yeah.
in. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Thanks. Take care of you. Bye.
This podcast is hosted and produced by Susanna Porowski. The opinions expressed in this interview are those of the person that shared them and by no means applies to everyone. If you think you have a problem with drinking or using drugs, please consult your local professional and reach out. In the Sober and Free Facebook group, there is often someone there to chat with, and we would love to have you as a member. Simply search Sober and Free in Facebook groups and answer the few simple group questions and agree to the group rules. Have a happy, sober day.
Stay light as a feather. Shake away the weight, cut what makes you tethered. Trust when you fall in every risk you take, knowing redemption's always on its way. Let all the courage in you start to wake. Unafraid, 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 I'm unafraid. Every second I'm raising up higher. Unafraid, I'm unafraid. Don't count the mistakes, look for better measures. Keep hope in your gaze, hold truth as a treasure. Trust when you fall in every risk you take, knowing redemption's always on its way. Let all the courage in you start to wake. Unafraid, 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 I'm unafraid. Every second I'm raising up higher. Unafraid, I'm unafraid. Unafraid, 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 I'm unafraid.